You've been having regular conversations with your mentee throughout the year. If you can bring some data into those conversations, they can become even more powerful than they've already been. In this video, we're going to share with you some ways that you can facilitate conversations that include data. When you have data-driven discussions with your mentee, remember that the goal is to instill a habit of reflection on their part, right? First, you help them look at data in order to make decisions, but you want to eventually to have them doing that on their own.
Remember when we called that a superpower just a few months ago? Reflection is what we're absolutely after. So let's look at some possible data sources for those conversations that you're having, and broaden your picture of the word data. If you're like me, you're picturing, bringing student work to the table. I'm bringing the latest assessment to the table. I'm bringing a CFA. But there's more to data conversations than that. Although that's a fine source. Student work is the first one I'll talk about. It really is as simple as yesterday's assignment or a recent assessment. Okay, you could also use a mentee self-assessment as data. Now, at the end of every chapter in the book, Why Didn't I Learn This in College? The blue book, there is a nice self-assessment. And so Jeff and I picked out one that fit with what we're talking about this month. And it's on page 168, focuses on assessment practices. It's called Making Assessment a Learning Experience, How Am I Doing? And it would be a great conversation starter with your mentee. Another source of data is in many of your districts, you have the responsibility for observing each other. So informal observation data, putting it on the table between you and thinking it through, what does it mean in terms of practice, is a source of data. You also could be inside your mentee's classroom observing certain students. Upon her request, she may have a couple students she's trying to figure out and wants your eyes. So you're in there and then you're collecting data. Another source of data that sometimes gets overlooked is teacher work. Things like lesson plans, communication either for or from parents, written communication like maybe newsletters, substitute plans, those kinds of things that we just take for granted. That's data. So just something to think about here.
All right. So Brenda shared with us a number of sources of data. So you as a mentor can be thinking about those different sources and sort of cherry pick some that you think might be the most fruitful to use with your mentee. And once you've done that, then go ahead and start to plan out the conversation that you might have. We've included a list of 8 things to think about when you go to plan out your conversation with your mentee. And it's linked in the monthly mentoring guide. And I think you can see it here quickly on the screen too. Take a look at those and they'll help you plan an effective and efficient conversation with your mentee.
There's some really good reminders on that list. So, all right, now I'm going to show you a slide you've seen before, and that's the 3 C's. We talked about them. We showed you the continuum of 3 ways of interacting with your mentee. Consulting, where you become the expert. You're telling. Collaboration is the middle stance, and it's where you're working together. Honestly, when I walk into a conversation, sometimes when people are collaborating, I can't tell who the mentor is and who the mentee is. They're talking in terms like our students, us, we. It really is hunkered down and thinking together. And then the third stance is reflective coaching. It's sometimes described as mediating the thinking of a colleague. It's here where you're really supporting your mentee in reflection, problem solving, and in being able to make her own decisions and plans. I can tell you if your mentee makes her own decision, it's likely to stay made far longer than if you're telling her what to do. So you're often in the reflective stance when you bring data to the conversation with your mentee. And to do that, you really need a mentoring toolkit for those data conversations. So To start off, what would I put in it? Absolutely, a good list of questions. It's really helpful to collect open-ended, reflective questions that work for you. I'd even recommend bringing a small handout with those questions, maybe the size of an index card, that you can keep within your reach at a data conversation. Ahead of time, think about the kind of data conversation you're going to have. You may be examining student work, you might be reviewing instructional plans, or you might even be looking at data from an informal observation. Pick the kind of questions that will match the purpose of the conversation. And there is a wonderful list of questions for you to consider attached to your monthly mentoring guide.
Another item in your toolkit should be a protocol, or you should have protocols in your toolkit. Protocols are structures that you follow in order to lead you to deeper conversation about student learning. In the monthly mentoring guide for this month, we link to one protocol, which is a very, very easy one, about how you can sort student work from something more elaborate down to an exit ticket, who knows, but sort student work, looking for common things in order to make decisions about class tomorrow or the next day and what instructional moves you're going to make with your kids, right? Because after all, we want to be able to turn the data through a conversation and analysis into action. So look at that protocol when you get a chance. You see, it's very simple, but it's very effective.
You know, Jeff, it's also one of the most efficient ones because it's designed to be able to complete it in 30 minutes or less. So I know you all don't have a lot of time, so we were trying really hard to bring you something that was time efficient. Now, I will also give you some tools that come out of the Green Book, the 21st Century Mentors Handbook. Sticky notes in hand, highlighters in hand. Let's take a look at Chapter 8, titled Data-Driven Discussions. I'll take you first to page 198, that's titled Data Possibilities. I gave you maybe 5 or 6 ways of looking at data differently, but there's far more for you to consider on 198. Pages 209 and 210 are additional question stems that promote teacher thinking. So you not only have the list that we put onto the monthly mentoring guide, you have these stems as well. And then additional ideas for looking at student work and assessment data on pages 216 and 218. Never satisfied with our repertoire as teachers or as mentors. So there's some things to add to your toolbox there as well.
So ultimately, we want our mentees to be able to use data, to be reflective with those data on their own. As a mentor, we want to build efficacy and confidence in our mentees. When we facilitate a data-driven discussion with them, we are modeling a way of thinking that we want our mentees to embrace and then do on their own. We suggested that you have a variety of data sources to look at. We suggested that you plan the conversation and we offer you some reminders. We suggest that you try to have that reflective coaching stance of those 3 C's with your teacher, mentee, when you look at data. We offered some question stems that might help, and we pointed you to a protocol as well as other resources in the Green Book. With those resources, you and your mentee will be more data-driven, and she'll be more reflective on her own as well as in collaborative teams.
I'll leave you with a quote. We don't know the source of the quote. It's unknown, but it's wonderful. Data is not just numbers on a page. It's a story waiting to be told and a plan waiting to be formed. So with that, I'll say goodbye.